Hi everyone. I'm just doing a little video to give you a run through on assessment 3, primarily the 3A return brief assessment. So assessment 3 is a little bit larger than the other two assessments that you have completed within this unit so far. Assessment 3 takes a kind of a full process approach where you get to create something that is really unique and exciting, and you aren't limited to kind of hand-drawn approaches this time. So you can kind of do whatever you want in terms of a digital digital aspect, and things can be drawn on Procreate. They can be done in Photoshop, Illustrator, even some 3D modeling. But what I wanted to run through is just how to get started, because we want you to get started pretty much straight after the break in week 7. And this assessment has 2 submission components. So we have assessment 3A, which is submitted in week 9 via Miro, and I will explain how that works towards the end of this. And then you have your final submission at the very end. But it's important to differentiate them because there is a purpose for each of those assessments, even though they are part of the same assessment. So assessment 3A is essentially the planning stages of what you're going to produce right at the end. It's a return brief, so you will be outlining exactly what you're thinking of doing. You'll show some concept development and stuff like that. But the purpose of that is to share on Miro and get the feedback relatively quick. So it is always within 1 week of sharing that you'll have feedback to develop your assessment on. And it's really useful for me to understand where you are at. Now, we have a lot of people in this unit that aren't active on Miro, and I cannot stress this enough that this assessment requires Miro participation. If you don't, and you just work your way through, it's going to be really difficult for you to achieve a high grade. I'm not saying it's going to be impossible, but it's going to be really difficult because you're not receiving the feedback from myself and the peers in this unit. There's a lot of design development. We want you to produce a really polished outcome right at the end of this. And if you just jump in at the very last minute and do that, it may miss certain key elements or key components of the brief that you are required to do. So please, 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 and I will keep announcing it every week, share on Miro, participate in Miro. It's really, really beneficial. Now, the A3A submission, which will be on Miro, you'll have a dedicated Miro board for that submission. And I will put all of this in an announcement, but essentially how that works, if you've never been a part of a Miro submission, is that board acts solely for the purpose of sharing the assessment A3A. It's not going to be for any work in progress. There'll be no feedback other than the assessment feedback given on that board, and it won't be monitored after a certain date. So it's really important to take note of the date of the submission and submit by that date, because after a week, I will not be on that board and you may miss the opportunity for feedback. So that's really important that you just take note of that. So you'll get an announcement with that. You'll also get the notification of the adding of boards, and that will be in the coming weeks. So for assessment 3A, as a really brief run through, I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but I want you to get started on this as early as possible. So everything you've learned in assessment 1 and 2 will really help you identify the key design principles and findings that you'll be able to apply within this final assessment. As I said, you don't have to be doing hand-drawn components. It will need to be created using digital formats. So however you want to do that is up to you, but Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, 3D modeling, you can use Procreate. You can kind of do whatever you need to in that area. But the key thing to start with, and this is probably the most important thing very off the bat for you to determine what you want to do, is that you need to select a client. So we have a client list in the assessment brief, which I'm sure if you've read it, you'll identify that link. But the client list contains a few clients that you get to select from. So we have first the Fiat 500, which is one of the clients, where you'll explore different product ranges across all of these, but different product ranges and things that can extend the product life and I guess the product experience for their customers. So make sure you read the little notes down the bottom here. So for the Fiat brief, consider what product the target audience would value and increase the driving experience for those Fiat 500 owners. And it's really important to consider the brand heritage and uniqueness of this range. Second, we have Grapha, which is an environmental gardening kind of industrial movement. And that's the product kind of focus. So consider the values and the missions of this brand and what the product will complement in their existing range. A heavy consideration is the audience and the style of packaging to reflect their mission, which is up here. Third, you have Clark Street Coffee. I don't think I need to explain that one too much. But for the brief, it's really important to consider a new visual direction applied to an interesting product and packaging execution to create exciting and a fresh look and feel for the brand. Consider the purposeful packaging ideas that will expand this brand into other demographics and educate mind consumption. And then finally, you have Trek bikes. So again, a biking product. So consider the different types of bike Trek offers and select one area to explore a complementary product for Trek riders. Consider purposeful packaging that will contribute and encourage more riders as the world needs the bicycle more today than ever before. So there are your 4 briefs. One of the things I should mention, if you do select the Clark Street Coffee brief, which a lot of people, in my experience, they gravitate towards that one, is that you cannot select coffee-related products such as coffee machines, or coffee keep cups. The product that you select and you create has to be original. So it is important that you get approval on your product idea through the sharing of Miro. Once again, stressing the importance of Miro here to say that if you do not share and you don't tell me your product early enough, that you could not pass the assessment because you haven't done a product that aligns with the brief. So really make sure you use Miro to your advantage. It's a very useful tool. I know everyone is busy and doing other things, but there still is level of engagement required. As someone who's taught at a number of universities and have obviously been to university for design, it's really important to take advantage of the years that you have a mentor, a professional person talking to you about design, because once you get into industry, the mistakes that you can make at university do not fly very well in industry. It's expected that you know what you're doing. You can't know what you're doing if you don't ask and don't learn. So please take advantage of that. And I'm sure any other ELA will agree. It's also just to improve the engagement on our Miro boards. A few of you have commented saying that it is pretty quiet on there and other units that you're in are really lively. This happens occasionally, but it's really important that to improve that engagement, you are on there. That's the biggest thing. That's the key takeaway. So we can't complain that it's quiet and then we're not doing anything. That makes it quiet. So just please get on there. You within assessment 3A, there's a few components that you'll need to do, which is all over here. So we have the cover page, of course. We have a short introduction of the selected brand and the initial ideas on which you want to focus on. You have your typographic exploration and sub-brand. You need to identify your chosen sub-brand for the brand and selected an initial naming exploration visually displayed as branding options. Consider what typographic families you might use in the rollout of your packaging design. You have to identify the product, so including a rough 50 words to describe what the product is. So what is your chosen product and why is it a strong solution? Include an image of your chosen product, which you can be sourcing from images of an existing product. We're not expecting you to create a new product. That's a product design subject degree, but you can use existing products similar in nature. In the concept development stage, you are required to derive 3 different possible ideas. For each idea, complete the following mind maps and sketching, mood boards, and packaging form sketches and die line trials. So within that section, you need to provide 3 hand-drawn sketches showing the specific packaging form and structure ideas. So a simple box or a cylinder is not going to be acceptable within this final assessment. So really explore something quite unique. So if you think about that, you're quite different possible ideas. Within that isn't going to be 3 variations of the surface graphics. We want you to do 3 different packaging designs. So this will be 3 different die lines at least. And then within that, those hand-drawn sketches, you'll have 3 of each. So there'll be 9 of those hand-drawn trials, 3 different outcome solutions, 3 different mind maps, 3 different mood boards. Now that's very important. You need to be able to do that because we need to see a length of work that then we can help you pinpoint and target. Because if you just do 3 surface graphic variations of the same die line, the die line itself may not be correct. So if we have 3 different die lines, 3 different surface graphics and explorations of each of those die lines, chances are we're going to have one within one of those that is really strong that you can then continue. You need to do a competitor product profile, which is an audit of 3 competitor products and consider the visual aesthetic and communication used, including the physical form, color, typography, and relation between price and visual appeal. So that's going to be really important on some of those product ranges. If you think about the biking is quite expensive, Grapha is almost a luxury. It's an artisanal product. So there'll be a price point that will be higher than something like Clark Street Coffee that will be lower. So consider that and consider how your packaging communicates that. A really good example of this is Aesop, for instance. It has a very minimalistic packaging design. It's a luxury brand, which it is. It's marketed towards a higher socioeconomic kind of demographic, but its packaging suits that. It's minimalistic and it kind of promotes the elegance and the higher price point. If we go to something in a similar category as Aesop, which is skincare, if we go to something that you can just pick up at this local supermarket, chances are the packaging isn't going to be promoting an elegant kind of look. There are, of course, some brands that are in the middle of those price points that will promote that, but they will be more basic in the sense that they are just kind of churn and burn, get it out. This is the packaging that suits that product, and it doesn't cost a lot to create. So that's really important that you consider that. You also need to do a consumer profile, which is a user snapshot that identifies at least one typical user for your brand and sub-brand, including basic details about who they are and why they will use your product with appropriate images to support. So assessment 3A is really for you to dive in and get the core of the research done and the exploration done. Assessment 3B will be where you get to create everything in a lot more detail. And I'll go into that later and provide you with the information that's going to help you dive into that product assessment, sorry. So I wanted to share this so you can actually dive in potentially over the break. It will be shared early week 6, and it will be beneficial for you to use the time, obviously, to cool down, wind away from university. But if you do have spare time, you can always start on it. It doesn't hurt. It will be very beneficial for everyone, as I said, to engage on Miro when we're back. I cannot stress this enough. But yeah, enjoy the break, and I will see you on the other side. Thanks.